Why, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Voice of the Rings. I'm your hosting guide, Zollin Ironshield, and this is the RiseToWar Legacy today, my friends. And we're going to have a fun theme today. We're going to be answering some cool questions that I think the RiseToWar community has put out. So I've got a few of them, and we're going to answer them today. So this is kind of a themed video. This is about dragons and food, all right? So in this video also, we'll check out a little bit of the food system. Here, there's a fun little event for Merry and Pippin in the game. But also, they've got a fantastic new, background. It's so cool. This animation is amazing with the music. So we'll let that run for a minute while we talk about it, okay? So let me bring up my notepad here of information. So here's the first question, all right? What they say about the Lord of the Rings as the original Western fantasy, or I'm going to say AKA probably like the father of fantasy, is a lot of people say about Tolkien. Why they say the dragons in the World of Warcraft are influenced by Lord of the Rings. I think these are kind of a similar question, since we're talking about dragons. I've talked about this actually on the channel in the past. We all know that Tolkien really kind of absorbed a lot of stuff, has his own amazing creation, so detailed, right? And I feel like most people just love Tolkien, and even if there's things that maybe some things they don't like majority they're like, yeah, but most of the stuff he did is great. I'm in the vote of everything he did was amazing, but I mean, I'm a Tolkien YouTuber. But really, he really gave us so many things, right? Things are influenced by Tolkien today in modern fantasy, right? We have D&D. We have World of Warcraft stories. We have, all the old stuff with, even RuneScape, all the classic elf, orc, halfling, hobbit, dwarf. All of that idea was kind of created by Tolkien, right? Because elves and dwarves of Norse mythology, and then he pulled some stuff from Greek and Roman, and all these different things. They're very different, right? In some aspects, there's similarities. He obviously created his own version of things, but it's really neat how he kind of took a lot of those things that were kind of being lost, really. Some of it wasn't, but it really wasn't in mainstream, right, anymore. And he kind of took that and just turn that into something so cool. I think the answer to the question then, that would probably be why he's the father of fantasy. He's just really respected, and he kind of brought it back to a medium that everyone could understand, right? Like that everyone was involved with, I should say. Not understand, because we can all understand the old stories, the folklore, and, mythologies and stuff of both, of Norse, Greek, Roman, and all the other ones. And there's a lot of from Britannia and all over Europe, right? Since we're talking about Western in that way. But it's also neat because now it's like a worldwide enjoyment, Lord of the Rings, right? They're from all over the world, and we all like Lord of the Rings, and it's for everyone, which is kind of a cool thing, and I'm sure is what Tolkien's goal was. So he kind of brought it down to an area where it's in the common culture and the common pop culture, kind of, even though pop culture wasn't really a term really used when he wrote it as much, but it's still cool, right? So, and again, I think answering the question of why are the dragons kind of inspired, in World of Warcraft, that's an interesting question that they came up with, because I would say the dragons are also inspired, in that style and feel in, even Game of Thrones and in so many other shows with dragons, right? So I think the dragon follow-up question is the same as why the fantasy. It's just Tolkien brought dragons into fantasy, brought them in a certain way that they're very clever, intelligent creatures that can speak. Now, obviously, D&D and World of Warcraft and other stories expanded on certain things, like the whole idea in World of Warcraft where dragons are can form into people, turn into people. That's not really super in Tolkien's lore anywhere from what I remember, even the Second Age. But it's kind of still pretty cool, right? I'm a big fan of all of these fantasies, mind you, just throwing that out there. So now the next thing, let's bring up the next question here for this little event today, featuring dragons and food, is why Smaug is the last dragon in Middle-earth? Okay, so what's Smaug's greatest regret? These two questions. One thing I'm going to point out real quick is that this is very generalized. Smaug is actually not the last dragon in Middle-earth. Gandalf talks about that. Okay, so there actually are, but he's the last great dragon. So I think this question that they put out was a little bit off slightly, but still a good question. So I think he was like the last great dragon. There were definitely other worms and other creatures, but Smaug he was almost more than a dragon. He was clever. He was deceptive. He knew exactly what other people were thinking. His intelligence level was up there with some of the smartest humanoids, being elves, dwarves, men, and hobbits, right? So like he knew. What was his greatest regret? If I was gonna guess, right? Tolkien points some stuff out, but if I was going to make up the guess of what his greatest regret was probably underestimating Bilbo and underestimating the Lakemen, right? Thinking that he was just so smart that he could do it, he could kill them all. They're little peasants, right? Little tiny ants below him. That's probably one of his biggest regrets. Right when he was dying, like in the Hobbit movie, he's probably like, no, impossible! When he dies in the Hobbit movie or in the books, right? Again, I do like the book version better, even though the Hobbit version of the dragon killing is cinematically insanely good. I don't know how people couldn't think it's super good. It's super awesome. Should they have made it a cliffhanger in the second movie? No. The killing of Smaug should have happened in the second movie. That's just that cliffhanger was just mean. But anyway, that's the movie. We're going to move on to the next question here. So imagine, let's bring it back up for everyone. Imagine of the dragon in many film and television works, Smaug's journey through Middle-earth. Well, that's funny. We kind of just talked about it, didn't we? We kind of already answered that and did that just now. These are good. That's a good follow-up question. Yeah, it's just really neat. If you look at the art by like John Howe and stuff, who Tolkien totally supported, right? If you look at the beautiful art of dragons, a lot of people like to point out the fact that, like, when it comes to the common fantasy terminologies of dragons, right? And also, just a little side note, dragons would be dinosaurs if you look at that from a perspective of our world, with people saying what dragons might have been. That's just kind of a cool side note. But let's stick with fantasy today. But Tolkien does dragons in a way that way that he has them drawn is that dragons are on 4 legs with 2 wings connected separately, right? And that's kind of like the classic dragon look. I know that, like, in the movie, the Smaug version, even though I think he's perfect in the movie, I love him, he's kind of more of, like, some people will say a wyvern, because his arms, if you notice, the wings are kind of his front 2 arms. Now, there is some discrepancy on that, and I know some people are going to disagree with me in the comments. That's totally fine, but there's a lot of different groups and things where it's like, well, some people think this is a dragon too. Some people just think it's a giant worm with wings. Some people think it's, 4 legs with 2 wings, right? And again, these are the definitions for fantasy dragons, not for real life things that we've heard about in stories and maybe we're some kind of flying reptilian dinosaur, right? So we're talking about fantasy. So that's a good question, though. But imagining them in film versus in television, I think that the Smaug in the movies is amazing. I think that seeing the dragons in Lord of the Rings Online, seeing the dragons in Rise to War, the dragon boss is pretty cool when you fight him in this game, absolutely. And then and other Lord of the Rings games that I've seen dragons in, or any game like World of Warcraft or stuff, it seems like usually the dragons tend to be more of, there's either the terminology of worm, right? Because Tolkien calls them worms. Lord of the Rings Online breaks that down. Worms are basically dragons without wings, just like lizard monsters on the ground. But kind of like, Gaurong, right? Oh, I just think I butchered his name. Gaurong? Oh gosh, I'm messing up his name. You all know who I'm talking about. It's the dragon that was so deceptive and got both of them killed, Barrett and Luthi, right? In the Second Age. Second Age, right? Or it's the First Age? Oh my gosh. I'm drawing a blank on that story a little bit in my mind, but Glaurung, that's how you say it. That's it. My mind brought it back. He didn't have wings, right? So he was kind of like a giant worm, right? Even though technically he'd be called a dragon, right? And then there's Ancalagon the Black, right? Which is a dragon that's like the size of a mountain. Like, I mean, see that mountain out there? Like he was ridiculous, okay? So he was insane. That was way back. He was probably one of the biggest dragons ever to live in Middle-earth. It was actually kind of ridiculous how big he was. from a fantasy perspective, but still really cool. Tolkien definitely went big with some of his fantasy stuff, especially when it comes to like the first age stuff, and then also like what will happen in the end times of Lord of the Rings, right? With the Battle of Derek. Yeah, anyway, we won't get into that too much. All right, so here's the next question. What determines... So anyway, I think Smaug's journey, anyway, to finish that third one, is I think his journey is pretty cool to see him brought into different artwork and seeing individuals do it, or, you know, the original artists who did stuff from Tolkien, or Tolkien's own art of the dragon, right? That kind of stuff. Again, I still think Smaug was just perfect. Now, would I have been worried... You know, would have been fine if they had made him more like the original drawings where he's 4 legs and 2 wings. Sure, he still could have been cool, just as cool. I love the face though. I really like the face they did. On a side note, I forget his name, but the guy who was going to do The Hobbit and then Peter Jackson took over. That's why Peter Jackson didn't have a lot of time to plan, even though I still think the Hobbit movies are really good. The dragon version, the concept art that he had, I didn't like. The guy who was going to do The Hobbit, I liked Peter Jackson's concept of Smaug much more. The other one had a lot of horns and stuff, like too many. I just didn't feel like it looked dragony. It looked more like, we're gonna jump to another fantasy game real quick, you know, Monster Hunter World. A lot of those dragons have like big horns and stuff, and they look awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't really have that Tolkien feel to me. I don't know why. But I mean, yeah, sure they can have horns, but you know, moving on. All right, what determines the diet of Middle-earth people? Is the fashionable to go to the Green Dragon Middle-earth? Well, these are both okay. Let's break down the second question first. Being fashionable to go to the Green Dragon. I think the Green Dragon is fashionable in real life to go to because it's in New Zealand now, right? But I think really what it comes down to is that's just a tavern pub. There's a lot of them all over the Shire. They're really important to the hobbits, right? It's just their daily place to go meet friends, you know, have a drink, have some food, all that jazz, right? I think there's something really neat about that, going to that and doing that together. I don't drink alcohol personally myself, but I love going to family friendly places where you can, you know, have a, you know, non-alcoholic drink too, or a drink, and then also have some food or something and meet, you know, restaurants, you know, taverns, pubs, whatever they are, as long as they're family friendly. I prefer PG on this channel. That's pretty cool. So then what about determine the diet of the people of Middle-earth? This is a good question. We're actually going to go into the game and look at the map, and I want to talk about a few things while we're doing that. All right. So there's a cool shot of Gimli, slow mo Legolas. All right. So anyway, we'll also look at the cooking thing, like I said, for this video a little bit. But let's go ahead and just look at the map of Middle-earth here for a moment. So what determine the diets of people? Well, if we look at a history in real life, right, and what determines the diets of people, a lot of people always like, you know, big cities are really around water sources, right? Because water is one thing that determines what people will eat, right? It's a big part of it, right? If you have water, you can grow certain things. If you have very low water, you might have to grow certain kinds of vegetables that need a lot less water, right? For example, I live in California, United States, on the west coast of North America. We have to think about the fact that we will sometimes, some parts, you know, 5-10 years, we'll get tons of rain, tons of water, you know, so, and we really have, we're pretty lucky. We can grow an insane variety of things in California. A lot of people don't know this, but California actually provides like 90% of the vegetables for all of North America. So all of Canada, all of America, and all of Mexico. Kind of interesting. A lot of people don't know that. But it's that we have a very nice, lush area. But let's talk about a plant that needs, like, avocados. They need a massive amount of water, right? And that's been a thing sometimes in some places of California where it's been a little bit, you know, we have droughts in Southern California sometimes. Northern California, they have massive water all the time. Redwood forests, it's technically a rainforest. It's a temperate rainforest, not jungle. But talking about that with rivers and stuff, let's talk about the Gondorians. What was their main food sources? Well, I think a big food source, I mean, of course, they probably had the normal ones like grazing because they had a lot of rivers right around their places. So they probably had cattle and pigs and stuff. Tolkien really brings that into the story, right? Those are really in the story. But, you know, fishing. You know, they probably had a lot of fish, just like the Hobbits. The Hobbits have a lot of beautiful areas. They have probably similar things to the Gondorians to an extent. Of course, we know they like pipeweed and all their other things too, but they loved gardening, right? I mean, we all know that. They're big gardeners. And the same thing with Arnor, right? They have a big lake. They probably had lots of fish, access to fish. Now, I'm curious because I bet you the coasts, like the Grey Havens, the Elves of Linden, they probably had access to a lot of seafood, right? Like shellfish, because they're right on the ocean. Same thing with like the Kingdom of Dol Amroth, right? They would probably access to tons of sea fish, and seafood and crabs and crustaceans and all that kind of stuff, right? Probably tons of things like that. And then if we go inland, if we go up to like the dwarves and like the people of Dale, they clearly survive a lot on fish. They live near waterways, right? They show that in the Hobbit movies. The dwarves, we know that they actually do use pigs and stuff underground and things like that. Now they get really cold, but I'm sure they do farming too to an extent. We know that from the Lord of the Rings Online and from Tolkien's lore with Gimli that the Moria actually, Moria was very, very, it wasn't just this scary, deathly rock hole in the ground. They actually had gardens. I have an entire lore video on this if you guys want to check it out on my channel. They had entire gardens. It was crazy beautiful. And they had air systems and light systems with mirrors that brought light in. So they had trees underground and gardens and, you know, animals for, you know, livestock and things like that. And trees to help make more air. And they had a whole water system. Like if you notice in the movies, and you can see it right here, there's a nod at it. I love that RiseToWar nods at this from the movies. It's very similar. RiseToWar has rights to the New Line Cinema movies. So that's why they're able to copy some things, which is awesome with this phone game. But that part, that's obviously an aqueduct. Right? The dwarves are very, you know, very good at their water systems too. So they had probably, maybe they thought like bugs were a delicacy. Who knows? Because I know that they fight giant bugs, right? In Moria and stuff, at least from Lord of the Rings Online, the MMO perspective, not this game. But, you know, maybe they were yummy. Maybe they tasted good. Do they have chickens? Who knows? I'm not sure. But I think that's probably it. And then when it comes to like orcs and stuff, I feel like they did not farm very much. Maybe I'd be curious if goblins did, with their societies in the mountains. Maybe like fungus, if they ate like had like mushroom farms. I'm sure dwarves had that, but like underground where they could eat the mushrooms. Maybe. It's funny because if you jump to like Warhammer 40k, orcs are like a fungus species. They're not even like, it's totally different, obviously, than Tolkien's orcs and goblins. But you know, and then of course we know the orcs and goblins are very nice, that they will eat anybody, including other free peoples of Middle Earth. That's why they're so bad. But I'm sure they ate everything like rabbits and stuff too up in the north. Same thing with dwarves. Did dwarves eat dragons? I don't know. I don't see why not. It's like, that dragon killed 3 of my friends. He's gonna be dinner. I don't know why, right? Why it wouldn't be. Now the elves, I'm sure the elves of the forest, they probably hunted deer, right, in game, and they probably collected mushrooms and things that grow in the forest and different herbs and, you know, roots, you know, and Lothlorien. They probably had beautiful things. I know they make a joke about green leaves in Rivendell, right, with the dwarves in that extended edition, but I mean, realistically, they probably had delicious vegetables, right, and delicious things like that. And I don't think the elves, like, I would assume, unless an elf was a vegetarian, that most elves would probably eat meat like venison and deer as well, things like that. So anyway, that's kind of cool. So moving on. And then I'm kind of curious about Rune and stuff. I have a feeling that they probably eat, you know, I'm sure they farm too and stuff, but I wonder if they eat things like, you know, snakes and things like that, you know, cook them up, that kind of stuff, like desert things. I don't know. Who knows? Probably. Mordor was pretty lush a long time ago, so who knows. I know there's a jungle to the south, right, with Harad, and then I'm sure the kingdom of Umbar and Harad probably get a lot from the ocean too. Yeah, I mean, I think we covered a lot of the big peoples here of Middle Earth. I know the Forichel did a lot of hunting. The people of up there, that's in the Lord of the Rings Online. They talk about that a lot. So the Great Bay, maybe they did, you know, whale hunting. I think that's so sad. I do not approve of whale hunting, but I'm just saying from a medieval standpoint, right, from the lore. You know, whales are awesome, and I really don't think we need to hunt whales. Whales should be protected. There's not that many. There is, but we don't want them hunted. All right. So anyway, with that, I mean, there's a lot of things, right? But they also hunt probably like, you know, there's like the abominable snowmen type creatures, and they're like animals, but that are in the north. Lord of the Rings Online shows them and stuff. Were they hunted for food and furs? Probably. I mean, they try to kill the people if they find them. So, yeah, I think that's kind of cool. That was a cool question to cover. I like this. If you guys enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this little special today. Again, I like using Rise to War as kind of a canvas sometimes, or like Lord of the Rings Online, because the map is so interactive and great. It's something I really, really appreciate about Rise to War. So then, why don't we do now, why does Lammas kill humans if they eat too much? Now, I don't remember if this is a thing in the lore, if it does kill humans if they eat too much. I would assume, because it says elves seem to leave a not eating anything at all image to the general public. Yeah, I have a feeling that it's so beneficial and maybe it expands the Lammas bread. I don't know off the top of my head. You guys leave a comment. Do you know if that is something that was mentioned in the Tolkien books? This might be something the Rise to War just had fun kind of guessing. Would it kill someone if they ate too much? I mean, you eat too much of anything, you could die from it, right? But realistically, people don't do that, right? Any race wouldn't do that, really. But it turns out they actually like meat eating in Middle Earth. There's a little typo there. But yeah, I definitely think we already talked about that. I think elves would definitely eat meat. I think they would. Some people kind of, the Peter Jackson adaptations kind of imply that they wouldn't. They only eat vegetables because like they don't want to harm things. And like Lord of the Rings Online kind of implies that, you know, you won't harm like little creatures and stuff, which I'm sure they won't, right? But I think, you know, they find a bear that, you know, maybe it's a nice bear, they'd be fine with it, but, you know, that bear's trying to, you know, attack their horses or you know, their farms or whatever, or innocent elves, then yeah, I mean, I think they'd probably kill it, and they probably wouldn't waste it, right? They'd want to eat it and may use the furs. So yeah, that's a good question. I'm not 100% sure on that. But the Lammas bread killing humans? I think that the fact is, we know that Merry and Pippin ate a ton, and we could consider them kind of like humans, so they ate like 4 each. And like it didn't kill them, right? So, and they would be a good example because they're very biologically, you know, yes, they're hobbits, but when it comes to their biologicalness, they're quite like humans. They're like small humans, right? So I don't personally think that Lammas bread would kill a human unless they just ate like 10 of them or something. And then maybe if they are special where they expand, where it could like, you know, rupture something. I don't know. Seems kind of dark. But I personally think that's what it would come down to. I think Lammas bread is probably kind of like almost like the Jewish bread, right? Or like, you know, you like flatbread you'd use it like, you know, taking communion or something. That's kind of what I always imagined elven Lammas bread as. But I feel like Lammas bread probably tastes good too, because knowing elves, they're like really good at everything, so I feel like it's probably like delicious with like some certain like herbs or spices, or maybe some even sweet sugar. Who knows, right? Is it a sweet like powder cake, right? Who knows, right? So we're gonna bring up the cooking event here with Merry and Pippin in the background for a minute. So this is fun. I will do a little video showing you guys how to play this event too. I'm not sure I think I can use the emulator here on the LD player, but anyway, my friends, that was really fun. I really enjoyed answering these questions. That was a fun little event. So again, they're kind of hosting this little event right now, and they had some questions, so I thought, I'm gonna review them. This will be fun. So again, about dragons and food, that's the theme right now. And it was really fun kind of answering these questions. What do you guys think? I'd love to hear you could number them, you know. I think it's kind of like 2 questions in each question, but I'll just let you guys number them how you want. I'll just say 1 through 10, right? And if you want to, you know, answer, you know, number 4 or something, you know, if you want to do this one, what's the greatest regret? Leave a comment and give me your ideas. Like and subscribe. And I will see you guys all in the next episodes of Voice of the Rings. You can pause it right here if you want to read this and type answer on one of yourself down there. But it's super fun, and thanks to my Patreons for their support. And thank you guys for all watching the video. Stay happy, my friends. Baruch Kazad Kuzade menu. I will see you on the next episodes of Voice of the Ring. Subscribe's there. And again, check it out. It's kind of fun. I think RiseToWar is a fun little phone game if you have the time. It's gonna not be for everyone, but some people will enjoy it. And I find it just a fun little side relaxing thing now that I play with a nice group of people, and it's just fun. And I like the little mini games they have like this, and it's really cool to see the characters like the actors because they have the rights. You know, looks like, you know, Dominic and over there. It's cool, Billy Boyd. All right, Merry and Pippin. Stay happy, my friends. I'll see you in the next ones. Bye.